what you're saying is often less important than what you're feeling when you're saying it. And so this kind of brings me to this interesting internet drama that has sprung up. And I don't want to go into too much detail about it because these types of things are very similar to a fire. And if you apply the wrong sort of energy to them, then it only causes the fire to spread and grow. And I think that it's better to contain negative energy, and more importantly, it's important to transform or transmute all types of energy into positive energy if you can. Sometimes you can't. Or I suppose theoretically any type of energy can be transformed if the alchemist is skilled enough. But this is an idea in Nichiren Buddhism, which I practice, which is called poison into medicine, which is the idea of taking something that is initially destructive and shifting it into something that is life-giving and healing. So this internet drama, the essence of the internet drama revolves around two paradigms that exist right now in the world of comedy. And these two paradigms are the paradigm where people who run shows, producers who run shows, who run stand-up shows, feel that it's okay to charge money at the door for tickets and not pay the performers because they believe that the performers are receiving compensation in the form of stage time or in the form of getting in front of, agents or people who could help their career. So one paradigm is I keep the money and you get paid via ancillary things. And then the other paradigm is I'm going to charge tickets at the door and I'm going to cut a piece of the pie for you. I'm going to give you some of the money that I make from charging tickets at the door. And I'm going to keep some for myself because I produce the show. And it takes a lot of energy to produce the show. Now, I am passionately for the latter paradigm, the paying the comedians paradigm. And I'm not sure why I get so passionate about it outside of the fact that it just seems to be the most fair thing. I think it comes from working at the Comedy Store as the talent coordinator and working with Mitzi and having the story of the strike drilled into my head, which is the Comedy Store was at one point a student of the former paradigm. They didn't pay the comedians, and the idea was that the comedians were getting stage time and they were learning to do stand-up, and this skill was something that they could take out on the road with them and make real money out on the road. But the comedians at the Comedy Store, noticed that the place was booming and making a lot of money and began to chafe at this, obvious injustice. And so they went on strike, and they the story of the strike is just someone's got to make that into a movie eventually because there's a lot of really weird, absurd elements to it, including I believe Pauly Shore standing at the edge of the building and pissing onto the comedians who are striking. So it was a real poisonous time. And it ended up where they started paying the comedians. And what did they end up paying the comedians? Not that much. They ended up paying the comedians $15 a set. But that was enough to end the strike, and as far as I'm concerned, that's fine. $15 pays for gas, gets you there. It's fine. But ultimately, the issue isn't one of money. I don't think any comedian really expects to make a living from performing in LA, and it's not one of greed. It's one of what's fair, what's right, the right thing. What's the right thing? And the right thing, if you're charging money at the door, is to give the comedians some of that money, because nobody would come to a show with an empty stage. Now, there's a people have addressed the issue of like, well, yeah, but they're just doing 10 minutes of stage time. They're just doing 15 minutes of stage time. That's really not work. Now, I heard this story once about how Picasso had been, I believe it was Picasso, had been sketching on a napkin, drew some, I don't know, who knows what he drew on a napkin. He's out of his mind, but he probably drew some pretty intense, crazy looking thing on a napkin, and someone saw it and asked if he could have it. And Picasso said, you can have it for, I don't know, $800 or $1,000 or some crazy number. And the guy's like, it took you 15 minutes to draw that. And Picasso's response was, yeah, and it also took me, 15 years to get to the point where I can draw that in 15 minutes. So the point is, when you see a comedian performing on stage, in general, it's taken the comedian years to get to the place where they can make you laugh. It takes time. It's a craft. It takes a long time to learn this. But even if it's their first time on stage, they're still part of the show. And if they're part of the show and you're charging money for tickets for people to come see that show, they deserve some piece of that pie. Now, the piece of the pie doesn't have to be a lot. It's all symbolic, really. It's just symbolic. It's essentially saying to the comedian, hey, I value your art. Thank you for coming here. I understand that you had to find parking, drive, and maybe pay for parking, used up some gas, whatever. You left your warm house to come out here and perform, and I really appreciate it. It's a good thing metaphysically, because something I'm learning right now is that what you put out into the universe at this point in history, and maybe it's always been like this, comes back to you. And it comes back to you in the most intense ways. So this argument happened over these two paradigms because this friend of mine was subscribing to the first paradigm of paying the comedians just with stage time and keeping the money. And so I during a podcast in Atlanta, I brought that up. And I brought it up out of anger because we had gotten in this weird little squabble where he had brought something up that I didn't think should be on a podcast. So I was trying to one-up him. And I wasn't... So what I'm saying is, even though I'm passionately a proponent of the idea that artists must get paid for their performance as a matter of what's right, at this moment, when I brought it up, there was anger inside of me, and it was a form of lashing out. So it wasn't a pure action in the sense that it wasn't purely just trying to set things straight. Because if that was the case, I could have easily told him to stop the podcast and taken him aside and said, "Hey, man, I don't understand why you're doing this. Blah blah blah." The point is, I could have been more skillful in my delivery of the information that I gave to him, and I wasn't, and I acted out of anger. And whenever you act out of anger, sometimes it's okay, but it's always going to be a little tainted. Your action is always going to be a little corrupted, a little tainted, and ultimately, what ends up happening is you're throwing a boomerang out into the universe of negativity, and that boomerang is going to come back to you. But it's going to come back to you with demons hanging on it. So this, because I wasn't skillful in my delivery of this information to my friend, it upset him. And he got really, 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 really mad. And the thing that had started off as this argument quickly turned into a conflagration with both of us screaming at each other. And it was really quite embarrassing. And so after that went down, I told Marshall Childs, this all happened at the Laughing Skull, one of the most awesome comedy clubs ever on the planet. I told Marshall, please don't upload that because it's embarrassing and there's no sense in sending that kind of crap out into the world. So time passes and my friend on a podcast just blew up and in a pretty intensely angry way, really let me have it. And this has resulted in, I think this has resulted in like a lot of unnecessary negative energy going out into the world. And also it's resulted in a kind of like weird rift in the little collective that has formed around this podcast and the Rogan podcast and the Death Squad podcasts. And I think it's a temporary rift, and I think it's something that we can all learn a lot from, but it's a rift nonetheless. And so what I want to say to my friend is I'm really sorry I'm really sorry about the way that I confronted you. It shouldn't have been done publicly. It should have been done privately. It shouldn't have been done on a podcast. Even if I stopped the podcast from going on the air, when I initially confronted you, I didn't know if I could stop it. It just came out, and I was angry when I did it. So I'm sorry. I really wish that I had addressed it in a different way. So there you go. Luckily, outside of the fact that it created some stinky internet nonsense, the ice house where the show happens is now going to be paying the comedians. From what I've heard, is going to be paying the comedians per set, and they're paying them I don't know how much it is exactly, somewhere between like $20 and $60 a set, which is a beautiful and wonderful thing. It's just sad that the price of it had to be such a explosion. But sometimes we pay a dear price to make change in the world. And to me, any type of confrontation or any type of angry conflagration is, in general, as long as no one gets physically hurt, is in general worth it if the end result is lasting change that benefits artists. And I think the more that we as comedians and artists and anyone out there who is not getting paid fairly for the energy that they're putting out in the world, the more that we speak up for our rights, the more things will change. And I don't think there's any need for any. I know comedians quite often are weirdly terrified of confrontation. They're scared of smearing their image, and they're scared of, they're scared of tarnishing their career, or they're scared of, ruffling feathers the wrong way or losing opportunity. But we have to think further ahead than just our careers. As humans, we have to think further ahead than just our lives. We have to think in the direction of a world where we're treating each other fairly. We have to think in the direction of the world where we're cultivating collectives of free thinkers who are helping each other succeed together and cutting up the pie in a fair way. Not for the sake of our own financial gain, because really, $20 or $30 for a show, it's quite meaningless, but because balance is beautiful. And things that are out of balance always tend to warp and tend to limp and tend to, more than anything, topple over and fall down quite easily. Whereas things that have balance, structures that have balance are things that we can build entire empires on, philosophies on, and friendships on. So let's get some balance into the world, no matter how much how far you have to fall initially to get that balance to happen, because it's going to end up in a lot of happy faces around you instead of sad, angry, or unhappy or secretly disappointed people surrounding you. Right, y'all? So that's that. Let's put all that behind us now.